If you are on a fitness journey, a journey to get fitter, healthier over time, it can be really overwhelming because there's so much information out there about what we should be doing. And we might be comparing ourselves to these fitness models that we see on social media or YouTube. And so it's really easy to compare ourselves to others, but those people might be in a different phase of their fitness journey. And so in this video, we're going to talk about 4 different phases of your fitness journey and how each one contains different goals, different challenges, and some recommendations that I have in each of those, some tips for succeeding in those. And before I get into that, I'm going to also talk about some overall kind of ways to approach these different phases that I think will help you to be even more successful and feel more confident in the fitness journey that you are on right now. Hi, I am Leo Babauta, creator of Zen Habits, and I've been on my fitness journey since, well, my whole life, obviously, but the current journey that I'm on really started a little over 20 years ago. And I am still on it. I'm on a different phase than I was then. And so I'm going to talk about the phases that I've gone through that I think are pretty common to others, and how I think that each one of those phases has some really unique challenges, goals, and some recommendations. But these are things that I learned the hard way through my own journey, and that I've done tons of research, but I've also helped others as well. So hopefully this will be helpful to you. To start out with, these 4 fitness phases go from less fit to super fit. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 being like incredibly fit. But as you hear about these phases, you might think, oh, this phase here where it's less fit is worse than this phase over here where it's super fit. It's like a comparison kind of thing. And I actually think that that's a huge mistake. And so the danger of presenting this in this way, that there's 4 phases, is that we think we should be progressing from least to fit to most, and we should be making that journey as fast as possible, and that I should already be in one of the later stages. And if I'm not, maybe I'm behind, or I'm worse than someone else, or I should be doing better. That is a big mistake. It's a misunderstanding of these phases. What we really want to do is just recognize the phase, because in and of itself, that phase is already enough to focus on. You don't need to be anywhere else other than where you are. That's why I'm talking about these 4 phases, because where you are is actually where you need to be. If you think you should be in phase 3 and you're in phase 1, you're going to injure yourself. You're going to make a lot of big mistakes. These are big mistakes that a lot of people make. But if you actually just allow yourself to be in that phase, let it be the only thing that matters. You don't need to get anywhere else. You will actually eventually get to the next phase, probably, most likely. It depends on your physical limitations and health conditions. But that doesn't matter. That's more of a side effect of really letting yourself be in that phase. You will actually enjoy that phase, because that phase is actually amazing, right? You don't need to get somewhere else to enjoy this fitness journey. You can really recognize the amazing things that you're getting out of that phase, or that you're experiencing in that phase. It becomes, in and of itself, just perfect. And that's the approach that I really want to encourage. Don't compare yourself to anybody in any of the other phases. Don't even compare yourself to anybody in your phase. Like, oh, I should be like these other 100 people who are in this phase. I should be like them. No, you're in this phase, but it's for you, and it's going to be different for you than it is for them. And so these are broad categories, but within that, everyone's going to kind of be where they are. I made this mistake one time when I would go out running. I would look at this other runner, and I'm like, oh, I need to run faster than them, because I'm already comparing myself to this runner. So if I run faster than them, I'm, for some reason, better than them. And, that was a ridiculous thing to say, because actually I'm not better than them, even if I do go faster. maybe this person is at the end of a 20-mile run, right? And I'm thinking if I run faster than them for 100 yards, 100 meters, I'm going to be better than them. Like that's a ridiculous thing. I'm only running 3 miles and they might be running 20. Or maybe they ran 20 yesterday, right? And so how do I know like where this person is on their journey and what's the use of comparing myself to them? It doesn't give me anything. And so that was a mistake that I made. And I had to learn to correct my thinking in that area. Okay, let's talk about the different phases. Phase one, this would be for people who are not in the best shape that they'd like to be. They might be starting out in their fitness journey, or maybe you've gotten a setback that's made you fall back. You got inactive for a while, you got injured, you have a health condition that put you back into this phase when you used to be fitter. So one problem is that people often will be previously have been at a higher phase, and then find themselves in phase one and think, oh, I should be somewhere else. So what I really want you to do is not compare yourself to anybody else or any other phase, and just let it be okay that that's where you are. So you know you're in this phase if you haven't been regularly exercising, or exercise is still a bit of a struggle, you're feeling a bit out of shape, doing some exercise might make you feel tired faster than in other phases. You know, it might be new to you. You might feel really awkward. You know, let's say you're going to the gym and you're just like, I don't know how to use these machines. Everyone else knows what they're doing and I don't. I feel really embarrassed. These are some of the things that are common to the first phase. Even if you're not, maybe you're going out for walks and you're like, oh, you know, people are going to see how my body looks, or see that I'm not in great shape. And so these are some of the challenges that come up in phase one. But let's talk about the goals for phase one. Phase one, the first goal is just get yourself into it. Just start in the process. Second goal is to be consistent with exercise. You don't have to be perfect, but try and, you know, be regularly doing it. It doesn't have to be every day, but you want to be more regular about it. And then a third goal is just to get yourself into slowly better shape. So increasing your fitness during that. And then a fourth goal, I think, would be to get more comfortable with the exercise, both with like knowing how to do it and, you know, the equipment that might be needed, whatever you're doing. But also comfortable with, you know, your body doing it, starting to understand some of the logistics that are required. And then a fifth thing that I think is really important here in this phase is you start to shift how you see yourself. We've had people, you know, I've worked with people who went from like, I don't exercise to I do exercise regularly 4 times a week. I'm a regular CrossFitter. I'm a regular gym goer. I'm a regular runner, a regular swimmer. And so these are people, or I go to yoga class 4 days a week. These are people who have shifted how they see themselves so that it just becomes a part of who they are. And I think that's one of the most powerful shifts in this phase is actually, this is where you can see the biggest change in your self-view is in phase one. And this is an incredible opportunity of this phase. So these are some of the goals. Some of the challenges are some of the ones I've mentioned already. You don't feel comfortable. You feel awkward. You don't know what you're doing. It can be a real challenge to work exercise into your existing routine. Maybe your life is already pretty full and like, when do I do it? How do I get there? What equipment do I need? What clothes do I need? A lot of the kind of stuff like that, it starts to get worked out, but it can be a challenge. You know, not knowing how to do things is a really big challenge. Another big one is your body is still kind of getting used to it. Right? So your body's adjusting. And, you know, if you start walking regularly or running or swimming or whatever, biking, whatever it is that you start doing regularly, it's an adjustment. And it's not just the muscles that need adjusting. Your lungs start to adjust. You start to like improve efficiency in your breathing when you do harder exercise. Your tendons are adjusting. You know, if you do something that requires you to like move your joints, tendons start to grow stronger and more resilient. You might change your flexibility. Your brain starts to change. A lot of things start to change physically, physiologically, and mentally. You start to make some adjustments as well. And so this can be a challenge because you're like, oh, I'm so sore, or like, maybe you have little injuries that happen because you maybe progressed a little bit too fast or didn't know how to use the equipment or things like that. This can be really challenging in the beginning. So a few recommendations for phase one. First recommendation is start out with just one kind of activity, whether it's walking or running, swimming, biking, yoga, climbing, whatever it is that you decide to take on, indoor cycling, indoor rowing, kayaking. Just choose one and then slowly acclimatize to that. For me, I started with running, but I did some run walking. And I only slowly progressed. And in fact, I was a little bit too ambitious. And if I were to go back, I would progress a little bit more slowly. You'll avoid injury this way. You'll avoid burnout, and it'll be more of an enjoyable process. So that's the first one, is pick one. And second, acclimatize yourself. Let it be a gradual process. Eventually, you might add a second kind of exercise. For me, I eventually added some strength training. So I was doing some push-ups and bodyweight squats, eventually some weights. But I didn't do that at first. I just started with running. And so for most people, actually, I recommend start walking regularly if you're not already doing that. If you are, you might add a little bit of jogging into that. But don't overdo it, right? You don't need to go too fast. Start to watch some tutorials on the exercise. Maybe you learn some things about the equipment, what to wear, that kind of stuff. It can really help just to get someone to explain some of these things to you. It helps to orient you a little bit and have you not feel so lost. I think that can be really, really, really helpful. And then just allow yourself to slowly change your tendons, your lungs, your muscles, but also your self-image. I think that's a really important process. And stay in this process. Don't try and get to the next phase really quickly. Just stay there and really enjoy it. It's actually a really powerful place to be. Okay, phase two. Phase two is, we could say, beginner intermediate. First one is beginner, second one is beginner intermediate. And beginner isn't like less than intermediate. It also doesn't mean you're just starting out. Maybe you've kind of reverted back to beginner. So beginner can be like, I'm just starting out. It's the first time I've ever done this kind of stuff. But it also could be I'm returning. So we want to be able to return to that beginner's mind. But beginner intermediate is you've progressed a little bit more. And so this phase, you are exercising more regularly. Maybe it's not every day. Maybe it's a few times a week. You're a little bit more comfortable. Your self-view has changed a little bit. Your body's changed a little bit in terms of being able to handle stuff. Maybe you don't look the way, or maybe you don't notice some like aesthetic changes, but you might start to feel differently. You might feel stronger or more accustomed to doing some regular exercise. You start to know more about what you're doing. But this phase also, there's still more regularity that you would like. So that's one of the main goals. There's still maybe some more strength to be built in tendons and muscles and overall physiologically. Like you want to continue to get stronger at whatever it is you're doing. So you want more regularity, more strength, or progression of your fitness. And then familiarity. You're still kind of getting to know this. For me, after I ran my first 5K run, I decided to start training for longer runs. And I started running for a 10K and then a half marathon and then a marathon and then an ultra marathon. But as I was going from, 5K to 10K and half marathon, this was an intermediate phase for me. I wasn't an advanced person yet. So beginner intermediate, I was still learning about running. I was still doing some research, more experienced people were telling me stuff. So in this phase, I actually recommend, if you haven't already, start doing it with others if you can. If you can find a gym workout partner, that was one that I did. If you could find a walking partner or a running partner or a swimming partner, this can really help. And join groups if you can, or at least connect to more experienced people in the field. You're going to learn a lot from them, and let yourself be in a learning phase right now. Start to slowly increase the regularity. So if you're doing 3 or 4 times a week, maybe you start to do something on those other days. Leave out a rest day, maybe where you don't do as much exercise or any, maybe just a short walk. But on the other 5 or 6 days, you're trying to like do something. Don't push yourself hard every single day, but just start to be more regular, start to expand your capacity to do physical activity. This is a slow expansion. I really want to encourage that. Um, and maybe take on a new challenge. Maybe you started with some walking and you want to add some running in. Maybe you're already doing some walking and running, and you might want to take on a second thing like strength training. Again, just do some push-ups. Maybe try pull-ups or body weight squats or body weight lunges. If you've already been doing that kind of stuff, if that's easy for you, you can add some weights in. Doesn't have to be too crazy. But we're just gradually starting to expand your physical capacity and strength and fitness. Don't do anything too intense in this one. What we want to do is expand the foundation of our physical capacity so we can do more activity without being injured, without hurting ourselves. And this is a gradual thing that could take months, even a year or more. So let yourself be in at least a few months per phase, but I would say really more of a minimum of 6 months per phase, and actually more realistically, more like a year or more in each phase. And there's not really a time frame that you need to be moving out of that phase. It's just to expect that to be more of the time frame. Don't try and rush 1 month to the next, to the next, to the next, Part 3 is, or phase 3 is, we would call advanced intermediate. And in this one, you are starting to get fitter. You're definitely feeling more comfortable and more used to it. Your self-view has really changed. And maybe you're doing 2 or even more kinds of activities. And now you are going to add some intensity. And so in this one, we've built a good foundation. We're more regular. We're more used to it. But we want to start to build on top of that with a little bit of intensity. When I say a little bit, the very beginning of this phase, we want it to be very light intensity in terms of like just add a little bit in. So for example, if you are run walking, maybe a couple of days out of the week, you added in a few sprints. When I say sprints, I don't mean all out, full on sprints, but like 80% intensity instead of just your regular 50%, right? So maybe you're running along at this pace and then you do a little bit of a harder sprint, and then you kind of walk and recover, harder sprint, and do a few of those. And that might be where you start in this phase. And then eventually maybe you build up to like 6 of those, and then 10. And then maybe on one of those days you actually go, all out for 5 instead of 10. And so we're slowly adding intensity in. And that's for running. If you're doing weight training, instead of body weight or light weights, you start to do some heavier weights. Nothing too heavy, but you start to add more intensity. And by the end of this phase, you will be used to more intensity. Not crazy intensity, but definitely a good foundation of I can handle slow, steady stuff like a slow running or slow swimming, slow biking, but I'm going to add more foundation. In this phase 2, in all phases, I do recommend some flexibility work. In this phase, flexibility work, mobility work, maybe is a better way to put it, actually becomes more important. I think doing it with others, doing it in classes can be really beneficial as well in this phase. In this phase, you might even consider getting a coach or joining a group that's coached. Let's go to phase 4. This is the advanced phase. And we're not talking about Olympic athlete, advanced CrossFit athlete. We're talking about advanced for the normal population. But in this phase, what we want is we want to be at we're trying to achieve a high level of fitness. And so in this one, our body's changed. We're probably not carrying around as much excess weight. We might have some stronger muscles. Our tendons have adapted. Our lungs have a better capacity to do some exercise for a while. We can do a good foundation. Regularity, exercise is just a part of our lives. We see ourselves as a regular exerciser. Intensity, we've built a good solid foundation of being able to do some intensity, not the highest intensities, but some. In this phase, some of our goals are be able to add even more fitness through more intensity and even start to slowly expand the base a little bit more. And what I mean by that is the fitness base of being able to do work. And so maybe sometimes you might even do 2 things in a day. I might do some weightlifting and also go for a run or do some yoga or go play some basketball. So you might add more activities in, even in a single day. That doesn't mean you have to be doing a crazy amount of exercise, but you can do more, and you can do some of them with some intensity. You're also building skill level. So if you're doing weight training, you should actually be building skill level in the intermediate one, but in the advanced intermediate. But in advanced, we want to be taking our skill level to the next level. So you should be watching some tutorials, really working on those skills, practicing them every single time. Maybe getting some coaching if they're really complex skills. Again, running doesn't take a ton of complex skills, but there are some skills to be built in running if you're going longer distances or doing more complex terrain or races. But in other things like swimming, we should definitely be working on our skills, even in the advanced intermediate, but especially here. Skills, we might add more sports. We might find ways to increase our base and our intensity. And so here there's going to be a few key things that we want to do. One is intensity, skill, and foundation getting even stronger. That's 3. And those are the most important ones: foundation, intensity, and skill. Those should all be taken to the next level compared to the previous phase. Coaching is a really good idea here, online or in person. In this one, we really want to think of ourselves as athletes. Our self-view is changing, and we're now athletes. Okay, that's what I've got for you. I hope this was helpful. Again, let each phase be its perfect thing in and of itself. I am Liba Bauta, signing off. I hope this has been helpful. Let me know if you have any thoughts on this. Object to it. Leave me some questions or arguments in the comments. Give this a thumbs up, subscribe, and share. I would really appreciate that. Talk to you all later.